Okay, we're on.
Excellent.
Hello, everyone. This week we are not going to do a written Game of Thrones post. Instead, for the very first time, Chris Lockett and myself actually watched Game of Thrones together. And we're very excited. And since he's here and I'm here, we figured wouldn't it be quicker just to do this instead of writing it all out. Also, we spent all afternoon in a barbecue, so, we're kind of sunburned and sweaty and look gross, so best time to do it.
Yeah.
So, we just finished watching episode 8. What was the title?
The Second Sons.
The Second Sons. See, he always knows. In which we were introduced to the Second Sons. Sansa and Tyrion get married. Daenerys has a big role. Gendry and Melisandre do some weird stuff, and Sam and Gilly we see at the very end, and who else? Oh, Arya at the very beginning. So we've got lots of stuff to cover, but we won't do this forever, so we're just going to sort of touch on some points, and I'm going to probably ask Chris a lot, which is what I typically do each week. So, Chris,
yes.
How about, he was just telling me a little bit before I hit record about how Melisandre and Gendry was a little bit different in the books. So why don't you tell me about that?
Yeah, actually, as I wrote in our co-blog when we had that meeting between Melisandre and the Brotherhood Without Banners, that is a complete fabrication by the show writers. It's not something that was in the book. What happens in the book is Gendry just ends up with the Brotherhood Without Banners, and after a certain point, presumably he'll come back at some point, but he just kind of, he goes off to do his own thing. And we lose track of that, a lot of that part of the story. After Arya, of course, separates herself out and is captured by the Hound. What they do have on Dragonstone is a young bastard boy in Stannis' household named Edric Storm, and he is the one who yields up the king's blood for the leech ritual ceremony. Something, I don't know what you'd call that, the burning of the leeches. Stannis wasn't very pretentious when he did it. He just kind of I like how he takes the leeches and just does what he has to do. He doesn't really stand on ceremony for that. But that's really sort of the only major change that I can pinpoint in this. Otherwise, it sort of falls out fairly similar to the novels. And there's a couple of other little changes that I'm not going to address because I'm never entirely sure
what's a spoiler,
what's going to be a spoiler, and what, and where they might rectify it down the road. Because there are moments when in the show when I've gone, oh, that's a change, and then I realize that no, actually they're just coming at the story in a slightly different way.
Doing a different direction. Because I was going to ask you if you have a better sense of what Stannis was hoping to achieve by tossing the leeches onto the fire, but I don't know if
I'm not going to give anything away that way. So what we had with the whole Melisandre bit was we get the very strong sense that she plans to sacrifice Gendry to her Red God, and this is going to somehow do something for Stannis to give him power, empower him.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what she plans to do, but this is a test, right? So she named the other 3 claimants to the throne in Westeros. Robb Stark, Balon Greyjoy, Theon's father, who we met, and then we haven't seen him. Yeah, he sort of disappears out of the narrative. And of course, Joffrey, or as we like to call him, the little shit. And we'll come to that in a second, because Joffrey was in fine form this episode, I have to say. But that whole ceremony is, so obviously he's wishing some sort of ill, I'm going to guess, on these other kings. So that's as far as I'll say without, getting spoilers.
Too much away. So how about we actually move over to Joffrey?
Yeah.
Because it was so much fun. As always, we love to hate Joffrey, and as I've said in many of the blog posts, that I'm going to be very upset if something happens to Joffrey, because I actually love to hate him so much.
Yeah.
He's so great. And Tyrion is the other favorite character of mine, and so when you get the two of them in a room together, it was just fantastic. So we see the very, very, very long walk to the altar, which felt like it was never ending. There's no wedding march. It's just those clomp, 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 which made it even more foreboding of the footsteps. And it's Joffrey on her arm, of all people, the worst Lannister of the bunch. And despite him calling himself a Baratheon, I mean, obviously we know different. And then he swipes the stool from Tyrion so that he's humiliated. And you can see Tywin is so pissed off that his grandson has done this, is turning this into a farce when he's still trying to hold up the Lannister name and make
some
it...
sort of respect.
Exactly,
some sort of dignity.
exactly. And then at the banquet afterwards, the reception, Tyrion is just screamingly drunk. And I thought Dinklage was amazing.
Yeah, he pretty much nailed the drunken Tyrion and his rambling as he's leading Sansa off, telling the story. It's like I once threw up on a woman in the middle, not proud of it, and it's just that his little asides there.
I'll tell you about it to get you in the mood.
Yeah, that was brilliant, and and I'm not recalling now whether that's from the book or not. I don't think so, but I'd have to go and check A Storm of Swords. The one thing I do want to point out in that scene that I really found striking, because somebody posted on Facebook after I posted our last co-blog and said that the camera work on this show is really good, and one of the things that I saw in this episode was the dramatic change in perspective you get as they're coming in. There's that, as you said, that long walk down the aisle, and at first we have this high angle shot behind Tyrion where he is above everybody and he is looking down on Sansa as she's walking with Joffrey, and Sansa looks very small. And then we get that comic shift where Joffrey goes out of his way to humiliate his uncle, so he steals the stool. But it goes from that looming moment when he actually looks almost a little threatening to this basically farcical interaction with his wife, and where she's basically not being helpful at all, and he has to ask her to bend down, and he's humiliated in the process, and it ends up emphasizing his diminutive stature that much more, because he started off as this very looming figure.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was really, really interesting, and I liked the way they did that. And just also for the record, that entire scene from Joffrey standing in for dear departed Ned Stark, and knowing exactly how much this hurts him, and very, very specifically twisting the knife to stealing Tyrion's stool. That was very, very close to the books. That was pretty spot on. That is, as was the banquet after, with Joffrey demanding the bedding ceremony, which, for those who might not, understand what that is, charming custom in Westeros. After the bride and groom are married, they get stripped down to their nethers by the guests and carried up to their room for the consummation.
Amazing.
So it's this kind of body ceremony in which everybody gets naked, or not everybody, but the bride and groom get naked, all sorts of jokes are thrown, but obviously Joffrey means for this to be
even more
a humiliation for Sansa, and Tyrion, in rejecting this, in fact, threatening the king, which again happens in the novel, that was done really well. The showdown between Tyrion and Joffrey is really good there.
Yeah. Well, Chris can tell you, I was sort of like this watching, and all of a sudden I was like, whoa, I'm falling right out. Like, I couldn't believe this just happened. And I was scared for a moment. Oh my God, something terrible is about to happen to Tyrion, but Joffrey is just so interesting to watch, Jack Gleeson, in that moment, because he's trembling. He's so angry, but I'm not sure if he's thought through what he would do if Tyrion didn't immediately backpedal in that moment and try and save himself, basically. And Tywin steps in, to sort of save both of them in that moment.
And again, hats off to Jack Gleeson, playing probably one of the most loathed characters on television at the moment.
Yeah. And he's so good.
And as I've said before, I often wonder, do people cross to the other side of the street when they see him in real life? Because because when you see him interviewed, he's charming. He's kind of goofy and really, really shy, actually. And and he just does this brilliant job of playing this character who is utterly loathsome, and he does a great job of bringing that to life in the show. But yeah, you see that tension there, right, where he doesn't quite know what to do, and his instinct is obviously to punish him, right? His instinct, is to say off with his head or whatever he would do. But he is smart enough to know the protocols of this, that you can't just have his uncle killed for being nasty to him at a wedding. But you throw that into the mix that he's a sulky teenager and a sociopath, and you get this bad combination. Bad things are going to happen.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Okay, how about we go over to Daenerys? So, we are introduced to the Second Sons.
The Second Sons, which are a mercenary band, 2,000 soldiers who are sellswords, as they're called in novels, who are basically muscle for hire. And you have their 3 captains, one of whom is the rakishly handsome Dario Naharis.
I was very happy.
Who looks rather different in the show than in the novel. In the novel, he's still described as being extremely handsome, but he's very flamboyant and dressed in multicolored silks, and he's got a beard that's forked and dyed different colors, and his hair is dyed one color, and he's got swords.
So he looks like he lives in the capital in the Hunger Games.
Exactly. Actually, yeah, that's very much. And he's got swords in the novels, twin swords, and their hilts are carved to look like naked, wanton women. He's
well, we do see that on the one that he's...
Oh, that's right. Yes, that's right. Okay,
he does have a dagger. He does have that
dagger. Yeah. And Daenerys immediately sort of feels this attraction to him. It's interesting, is when in my dream casting for this, long before this was a glimmer in HBO's eye, and I thought, okay, who would play this? And I always imagined him as Joseph Fiennes. That character. I was sort of, for some reason, that was how I thought of the character. But the guy they've got for this is he's suitably dishy, I think. So we're already seeing the tension.
Yeah.
That was a great moment where Daenerys rises up out of the bath, and it's one of those, because the show, and I think to a certain extent justifiably, is criticized for its sex position. It's criticized for its excessive use of nudity, often when it's completely unnecessary.
Gratuitous.
It's gratuitous, and that's that's fair. It does every so often. It works in the context of the story, but a lot of the time you're sitting there going, again. And in this case, though, I think this is one of those sort of interesting moments where it's like Brienne in the bath, and there's an interesting echo there when she's hiding herself from Jaime until he just goes a bridge too far, and she just stands up and has that moment of defiance.
Which is interesting, because in my notes I wrote Daenerys stands up defiant, and which is the same word I used when Brienne did. Yeah, absolutely.
Except with Daenerys, with Brienne it was instinctive. With Daenerys, it's a very measured. I'm going to stand, and you're going to see me, and and after this guy's whole disquisition on what he's doing for her beauty, it's a really interesting moment of an exercise of power, where you think about, okay, she is literally naked, but she's owning that, and she's not, and she allows Missandei, her servant, to garb her, but it's really well done. One of the things that I've loved this season is just watching Daenerys become more and more of a queen, right? Because she's come a very long way, and you saw it in those earlier episodes, like when the immolation of Astapor, as I like to think of it now, when she declaims what she declaims in High Valyrian, and you see that look on Jorah Mormont's face where he suddenly realizes what she's doing. And for the first time, there's a respect that wasn't there before, right? And he's always he loves her, obviously, that's no big secret, no spoiler there. But he serves her out of love, and it's only once we've come in, after Astapor and then on from here, that we start seeing other people looking at her as like, okay, this girl's got some game.
Yeah.
And you also saw that we were talking before about last episode when she's accumulated all these titles.
Love the titles.
Yeah. And this is sort
of
building
Mother
in her
of
character.
Dragons.
Yeah. So, and I mean, I don't think I'm being too spoilery when I say, and now we've got a hot guy thrown into the mix. So, how is this going to complicate Daenerys's world? To
Yes.
have this guy who's obviously has no compunction about flirting and more, and she obviously has a bit of a thing for him.
A desire
How
back.
is this? How is this going to fall out? And how is Sir Jorah going to respond to this? So,
Yes.
we're not.
That's interesting. I wasn't thinking that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of really interesting stuff happening there.
Yeah.
Right. So okay. What else have we got here? Because we should end with Sam and talk about the final scene, but make sure we don't miss anybody.
We should talk about Arya.
Yes.
And again, as I think I've said this the last 3 times the Hound has shown up, I keep saying he's such an ambiguous character for me because she actually says to him, there is no one worse than you. And I thought, that's such a strange thing for her to say because when she lists her list of the people she wants to kill, the Hound is way down there, below Joffrey, and I can't think of his name, the guy who actually executed Ned.
Sir Ilan Payne.
Yes, Ilan Payne.
And,
Cersei and the Mountain. She's got all of those people ahead of him, and yet here, facing him, she says, there's no one worse than you. Now, we have seen what he did for Sansa.
Yeah.
She doesn't know that until now, and he sort of hints at it and says, talks around it. But then he explains to her he's not taking her back to King's Landing, and as he says, fuck the Queen, fuck Joffrey, and she's like, what? Because as far as she knows, he's still working for them, and he's taking her back to where she was supposed to be, as far as they're concerned. So this is a whole new thing that you can see. There's a look on Arya's face like, wait a minute, who is this guy?
Yeah, and we don't see enough of the Hound, I think, because he's such a great character. I mean, we see enough of him. We see exactly enough as the story needs.
Yeah.
But I like Rory McCann, the actor who plays him, and he really captures that sort of essence of, I don't give a fuck about anything. I do what I want. I love killing. He makes no bones about that. And one of the things that makes the Hound so interesting is he is, among all the characters in the story, the one who is the most... he hates hypocrisy more than anything else. Like, he just wants nothing to do with you if you're telling lies to yourself. And that, so that his relationship with Sansa last season was very interesting on that front, where he's very, he's not trying to teach her a lesson, he's just telling her, like, you're lying to yourself, you're telling lies, you're telling stories. And when Arya says, there's nobody worse than you, I, kind of laughed at that, because, of course, we're sitting there going, seriously? After all this time, you're going to say that?
Really? Do you not know Westeros?
But sometimes I like there are those moments that remind you, these are little kids.
That's right.
We forget this because this is probably the best set of child actors since season 4 of The Wire.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, absolutely.
And it's astounding how good these actors are, and Arya especially. I mean, I think... I'm glad that Peter Dinklage got the Emmy, but I mean, honestly, I think Maisie Williams needs to be nominated because she's done it so well.
Yeah,
and she captures that. But every so often, she's a kid. Of course, she's going to say something petulant like that because she's sulking.
And he immediately responds, "Well, then you need to meet my brother," which is great.
Yeah,
he did this to me.
Yeah, exactly. But. So that scene, I think, that's setting up something to come that I'm only going to allude to, and I think, again, not really spoilery, because anybody who watches that knows, okay, we've got all of these convergent storylines now.
Yeah.
People are descending on the twins, and we have, the Stannis storyline developing, and so we're down to 2 episodes left for the season, so we know that some big stuff is happening, and I'm sure that all of those of you who have read the novels like me, we're all just waiting because we know when the stuff goes down that's going to go down, it will in fact break the internet. Because people thought that when Ned Stark got beheaded in season 1, that the internet lost its
I lost my mind.
But that's part of the pleasure. I was asked earlier today. By Nikki's husband, so how is it different watching the series when you know the books as well as you do? And one of the great pleasures is watching other people. And other people I know who have read the novels, they have the same reaction. It's a, just wait. Just wait.
Yes. In fact, Chris's only real setback in this episode is that the big thing he was hoping it would happen here, and it didn't. And then he's like, "Oh, I really wanted to see your face when it happened, but so
you're gonna have to wait." To ask Rob to take a picture of you next week. I think it's good. It's gonna get going down next week.
Yeah, that'll be amazing. So, really quick though, back over to the Melisandre story. We see Davos reading in his cell. So they were, I don't know if that is inferring something that's coming up, but him learning to read and becoming educated seemed to be something different than what Stannis and Melisandre are sort of
he becomes a bit of a spoiler. Not to give a spoiler about him being a spoiler. But he, of course, he's Stannis' conscience, and I quite like that scene when he says to Stannis, "You could have freed me tomorrow, you could have freed me yesterday, but you're doing it today because you know I'm going to call you on your shit."
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why Stannis keeps Davos around. And Davos, I have to say, is one of my favorite characters. I love Liam Cunningham, the way he plays it.
He's so good.
And he's really good in the novels too. And he's a really interesting character because he is this voice of honesty. He's the guy who the Roman emperors used to have sitting behind them when they rode through the Triumph. We would lean over and whisper in their ear, "You're not a god. You're just a man. You're not a god," to remind them that they're not in fact all that. And Stannis has Davos for that. So him learning to read, if it plays out the way it does in the novels, is going to be a fairly significant turning point. The other thing that I want to harken back to this is several episodes ago, I forget exactly how many episodes ago now, we had that scene between Tywin and Cersei when Tywin is writing letters and she accuses him of not doing anything to get Jaime back. And he says, I'm doing everything that I can. And those letters...
Yes, he said that time. Those letters are going to be important.
They're going to be important. They're going to
watch that. Yeah.
So that's so we've got two of those little moments, and I like the Davos reading because it's gonna. And I love the fact that he's reading a history of the Targaryen family.
Oh, I know, of all things. We see Lady Olenna.
Yes,
this
being
week,
awesome.
Being amazing, and it was so funny because right before that scene, I looked over at Chris and said, "It only just occurred to me that with all these marriages." Cersei and Marjorie will be sisters, but Marjorie will also be her daughter-in-law. So when she says, "Don't ever call me sister," I said, "What if she says, 'Can I call you mom?'" I think that would be even worse for her.
Well, and if I can just sort of pause on that one, because that was actually a really nice moment where Cersei threatens her.
Yes.
"I will have you strangled in your sleep if you ever call me sister again."
And up until now, it's been so subtle, like, "I hate you, I hate you, I hate you." But she's never said it, Yeah, that was a shock, that moment. And that was such a beautifully done entire scene where they would zip in. So first you see Joffrey whispering in Sansa's ear, and then you see Marjorie and Cersei over here. And then, and all these different people in the room, and Loras. Oh, and Loras and Cersei, their very first conversation goes spectacularly well.
Yeah. My father said, "Nobody cares."
He walks away with a drink. I'm like, wow.
There were some good laugh out loud moments in this
episode.
Oh,
that was brilliant.
That scene and Lady Olenna doing her thing, and of course Peter Dinklage's drunken mutterings as he's leading Sansa off. Sorry.
This was a really, really good episode for all of that. So I think that we have covered everything, and now we shall move to Sam and Jilly.
Yes.
So in this scene, the one Raven stops and they kind of go, anyway, and continue talking. The second one comes, then they went in, And I made a comment to Chris that all of a sudden, if you paid attention to the background noise, which I was, because the ravens freaked me out. At first I was like, do they have a letter? You know? Or don't ravens have letters? But then I looked at him and I said, this is getting very Hitchcockian to me. And
it was very reminiscent of the scene outside the church in the playground.
Yeah, in the playground, and the little kids singing that song, and and they're all on the hydro wires.
No, were they ravens or crows? I'm not a bird watcher.
Those were crows, I think.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Oh, in this
in
or
this,
in? I don't know. I thought they were ravens.
Maybe they were ravens as well.
Black.
Not that it really matters one way or another.
They're birds of some kind.
They're black ominous birds gathering in large numbers.
Mm-hmm. I thought at first it was going to have 3 eyes. That freaked me out a little. Yeah. But it was freakish. And then the White Walker shows up and and then I yelled, Sam's got a shiv! And it was just this crazy, crazy scene. So how did that play out in the book?
Played out just slightly differently, but the basic outcome is the same.
Yeah.
What happens is that Sam faces down the White Walker, one of the things we don't get a lot of from Sam in the series is just what a craven he is, right? He is scared of his own shadow in the books. Practically wets himself at the slightest thing. In the show, he's a little bit less like that. They don't play it up, right? So there's this climactic moment when he faces down the White Walker and reacting more out of fear and terror than anything, he grasps the only weapon he can get a hold of, which happens to be this obsidian knife that he found. Which, you remember, he was showing it to Jilly.
Of course. And at the time I was like, that's going to be important. But then, right out of my head.
Why would they show it to us otherwise? But obsidian...
Look, I found a cool knife.
Yeah, obsidian, but which within the world of the show is also called dragon glass.
And it can kill a White Walker? Is that
this was where we get to, where we're not sure. It's the White Walkers at this point seem more or less impervious, right?
Right.
Because we know that you can burn the ice zombies with fire, and that's one way to get rid of them. But the White Walkers are supernatural beings, and what is it that... There's also the suggestion that Valyrian steel can do it. So, like the sword that Jon Snow has. Would be one example of that, but the way it falls out in the show is it's not exactly the same as in the novel, but it's also the dynamic change a little, because what happens in the novel is the White Walker grabs Sam by the throat and he's choking the life out of him. Sam just sort of plunges the dagger in at close quarters. Here. And this is why we're not getting the cowardly Sam to the same extent. He's running to defend Jilly.
Yes,
right? The White Walker
has
cast him aside.
Yeah.
And is obviously has designs on Jilly and or her son.
The baby. Yeah.
And possibly recognizing it as hey, that's supposed to be mine. And Sam stabs him from behind, and the whole disintegration of the White Walker. Kind of cool.
That was fantastic.
and
ice crystals.
Yeah, it's always very interesting how sometimes this show it ends, the credits roll, and you're thinking, oh, they didn't really choose to end on a dramatic note. But sometimes they do like to end on a dramatic note. This was one of them
with the ravens or crows. Or
the
ominous blackbirds coming after them out of the woods. So that was crazy.
Yeah.
I
think that's it.
Have we covered everything?
I think so. I can't think of anything. We might want to take note of all the storylines that we didn't get a glimpse of. So we had no Robb Stark.
Yes, we were trying to figure it out. I said Theon Greyjoy, thank God. We didn't.
I think we have to give Theon a break for a while. Let him recover from his castration last week.
Yikes! Yeah, and Jon Snow.
And no Jon Snow. Right.
Yeah, and Bran.
Yeah,
naturally we don't have.
Still traveling north.
Still
nothing to report here.
Hodor. Hodor.
And I think Hodor is a good enough note to end on. So Hodor.